I just want to say Suge Knight's a bitch, and everybody down with him can eat a motherfucking dick.
If you want for me, you'll still be in prison doing life.
Suge Knight recently said he used to be a superstar and now he's just a no-limit soldier. What do you say to that?
Nothing. He used to be a CEO, now he's just an inmate.
The police, they snitches.
Snoop Dogg.
And if they get in trouble, they gonna get a free pass. Like if you hear about it, there's several artists that would never ever come to prison. Well, Snoop would never come. I mean, Snoop was on, you know, we beat a murder trial for him, but then he was on probation. Then he got caught with 2 ounces of, then he got caught with guns. And each time it's nothing, they're not gonna violate him. Because for the street guys know what I'm talking about. There's no puzzle.
This a bitch like his wife. Suge Knight's a bitch, and that's on my life.
In the year of 1992, Dr. Dre was appointed as the face of the newly formed record label, Death Row Records, after Dre formed the label with his bodyguard, Suge Knight. Suge had been trying to make it big in the music business ever since the late 80s, starting off as a bodyguard for various artists. Now that Suge had Eazy-E sign away one of the best talents in Dre, along with multiple others, Death Row was looking very promising. After officially launching Death Row Records, they held a launch party at a high-profile Hollywood restaurant called Chasen's on February 25th, 1992. Now, in Dre's contract with Death Row, Suge Knight had promised Dre that he would have full creative control over the label, and that no artist can sign to the label unless Dre approves it, because Dre couldn't just work with anyone. Backtrack to the late 80s and early 90s in the city of Long Beach, California, an aspiring rapper named Snoop Dogg would form the group 213 with fellow Long Beach natives and Snoop's childhood friends, Nate Dogg and Warren G. Snoop Dogg is a member of the Rollin' 20s Crips, located on the east side of Long Beach. Their neighborhood is primarily south of 21st Street, east of Long Beach Boulevard, and west of Orange Ave. The Rollin' 20s Crips often sport Pittsburgh Steelers gear and New Orleans Saints gear. Warren G was also a member of the Long Beach Rollin' 20s and was the stepbrother of Dr. Dre. Snoop would begin freestyling over cassette tapes throughout high school, but didn't take rapping too seriously at first. Dre recalled the first time he heard Snoop rap was at a bachelor party when Warren G would play one of Snoop's cassettes for Dre.
It was incredible. My baby bro, Warren G,
yes, sir.
He actually brought me the a cassette tape, and we were at a bachelor party, and I popped it in to listen to it like, whoa, I need to meet him.
Dre, having an incredible ear for talent, was convinced that Snoop had potential to be a star in the rap game, so he would then make the phone call to Snoop. Initially, Snoop thought that it was a prank and that there was no way Dr. Dre was calling him. I hung up like, dude, this ain't no motherfucking Dr. Dre. Dre called back and was like, be at the studio Monday. Dre and Snoop would then link up in the studio, and Dre realized that Snoop had real potential. Quote, Snoop comes in the studio and I put this track on. He's just freestyling and it was super sick. Then the thought of my solo album started becoming a reality in my mind. Snoop Dogg would then sign to the newly formed Death Row Records. Snoop and Dre were now ready to create magic. During this time, Dre had a lot to prove after leaving NWA on bad terms and forming Death Row with his partner Suge Knight. Dre had to come up with something legendary for his first ever solo single to prove to Eazy-E and the world that he was the biggest star in NWA. In early 1992, Suge Knight would become friends with Dick Griffey, who was the CEO of LA-based record label Solar Records. Dick Griffey let Suge have studio space at the Solar Records building in LA, and now Dre was ready to get to work as Suge had visions of becoming the biggest label not just in hip-hop, but in music entirely. In early 92, Solar Records was going to be the label that released the soundtrack for the up-and-coming film called Deep Cover. The film was set to release in April. Dick Griffey would executive produce the soundtrack, and Death Row, literally working in their building, would be recruited for the soundtrack. During that time, Dre and Snoop had finished recording a track that was titled 187. The track was set to be on Dre's debut album as a solo artist, The Chronic, but was prevented from being on the album due to its explicit lyrics about killing cops. Despite not being able to appear on The Chronic, it would be renamed to Deep Cover and was scheduled to be part of the Deep Cover film soundtrack. On April 2nd, 1992, Dr. Dre officially released the track Deep Cover, featuring Snoop Dogg as a single. This would be Dre's first single since leaving NWA, and would also introduce the world to Dre's new Death Row protege, Snoop Dogg. Despite the film itself not being widely successful, this track would be successful, peaking at number 4 on the US Hot Rap Songs chart. It was clear that Dre and Snoop had instant chemistry and were capable of making all-time classics. Later that year, on December 15th, 1992, Dr. Dre dropped his debut album, The Chronic. This album featured the smash hits Dre Day, Nothing But a G-Thing, and many more, featuring Snoop Dogg. Snoop was very prominent on this album and even introduced his group, the Dog Pound, throughout this record. After this album alone, Death Row was already the most prominent label in all of hip-hop, and wouldn't stop there, as the world was now awaiting the solo album of Snoop Dogg. Snoop's album release would face a huge roadblock because in the summer of '93, Snoop would find himself arrested for murder. As Snoop and Dr. Dre took over hip-hop, Snoop became the most buzzing rapper in the world after his absolutely legendary performance on The Chronic. The world was more than ready for Snoop to drop his debut solo album. In early '93, Snoop was already working on the album while The Chronic was still on fire. In the afternoon of August the 25th, 1993, Snoop heard a bunch of commotion outside of his LA apartment. Snoop's bodyguard, Malik, went outside to see what was going on. Snoop's bodyguard saw a car filled with street gang members arguing with one of Snoop's friends named Sean. When the crooks saw Snoop's bodyguard, they dipped. But Snoop, who watched the encounterment, recognized one of the people in the car, identified as 20-year-old Little Smooth. Snoop recognized him as the man who recently approached him at a video shoot with a pistol. Later that day, Snoop, along with his bodyguard and some homies, were in a Jeep where they would run into Little Smooth, who was sitting at a picnic table eating Mexican takeout food in the Palms Park located in Lakewood. They passed the park in the Jeep, but after Snoop spotted Little Smooth, who was outside of his apartment earlier in the day, he rolled up on him and company, stopping the Jeep. Now, some suggest that Snoop and his bodyguard actually went looking for Little Smooth, but others claim that it was just a coincidence. After Snoop rolled up on Smooth and his crew, Snoop's bodyguard allegedly waved at Little Smooth to come over to the Jeep. After a heated exchange of words, Little Smooth allegedly reached for his gun that was tucked in his waistband. Snoop's bodyguard saw this and allegedly pulled out a 9mm pistol and shot Little Smooth twice, killing him as Little Smooth tried to flee. Police would eventually discover Little Smooth's body in the park and murder charges would be placed on Snoop and his security guard. Snoop wouldn't be arrested immediately because he was allegedly hiding from law enforcement. Snoop's attorney would negotiate the terms of a surrender and bail. On the night of Thursday, September 2nd, 1993, just a week after the shooting, Snoop would appear at the 1993 MTV Video Music Awards. Snoop, alongside Dre, presented the Best R&B Video Award. After the show, Snoop immediately turned himself into authorities, where he would be charged for murder. Snoop would eventually be released, as Suge Knight would bail him out for $1 million. Now, we will get back to this case as the beef between Snoop and Suge unfolds, because Suge had some crazy claims. Suge Knight seemingly used the massive publicity Snoop was getting from this murder case to use it as hype for Snoop's debut album. As if Snoop wasn't already on fire, this amplified him even more, and actually made the things he was rapping about seem more legit in the public eye. On October 30th, 1993, Snoop dropped the first single for his upcoming album, Doggystyle, and his debut solo single called Who Am I? What's My Name? This being your first ever solo single is just crazy, because this song would absolutely explode, catapulting Snoop into a megastar. The track would peak at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, and now Snoop had taken over hip-hop. The next month, on November 23rd, 1993, Snoop Dogg dropped his debut album, Doggystyle, which would be insanely massive, setting the record for the most copies sold in the first week for a hip-hop album with 806,858 units sold, a record that would later be broken by 50 Cent. Death Row was at its absolute peak, as Dre and Snoop had done it again, creating their second consecutive classic, and it seemed as if nobody could stop Death Row. But the only ones who did stop Death Row was Death Row themselves, as after this album in 1994, a new label would take the throne. In 1994, following the insane release of Doggystyle, New York hip-hop had something to prove. The West Coast was seemingly outselling New York hip-hop for the past couple of years, but in '94, that all changed. Groups like Wu-Tang Clan emerged in late 93 with their debut album, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, and rappers like Nas, Drew the Damager, and more were making a splash. But there was one rapper who would single-handedly dethrone Death Row, and his name was the notorious B.I.G. On September 13th, 1994, Biggie dropped his debut album Ready to Die, which would sell only around 57,000 copies first week, which was not even a fraction of what Snoop sold in his first week. But this album was a slow burner, as it would creep up and become one of the biggest albums in the year of 1995. Biggie had it all. He was the full package. He had masterclass lyricism, hit-making abilities, and the swag that everyone admired. The entire New York hip-hop scene was threatened by Biggie's success because of the sheer competitiveness that New York had and because of how dominant Biggie and Bad Boy Records became. During the years of 94 and 95, Death Row barely put out any solo pieces of work, and they were internally falling apart. The atmosphere was becoming harder and harder to work, in which eventually led to Dr. Dre leaving the label entirely in early 96. In 95, Suge was jealous of Biggie and Bad Boy's success because he wanted to monopolize hip-hop and take over the East Coast as well. This would lead to Suge eventually forming Death Row East in order to take Puffy out of the game and go back to being the #1 label again. In 94 and 95, all Death Row released were 2 soundtracks and the Dogg Pound's debut album, while Bad Boy was pumping out hit records like Biggie and Junior Mafia's track Players Anthem on May 30th, 95, which peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. Biggie's track One More Chance on July 6, 1995, which peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Biggie was also crowned the King of New York in the Source magazine, which created a long-lasting term in hip-hop. Now I'm going to keep this concise since I already went in depth with Tupac and Biggie's beef in my video Tupac vs. Biggie, What Happened, so check that out for an in-depth look. To keep things short and sweet, Suge bailed out Pac in late 95 to recruit him as his Biggie and Bad Boy killer because Tupac already hated Biggie after the Quad Studio shooting in late 93. This would lead to Tupac and Suge essentially trying to ruin Puffy's life with the help of Suge's Mob Piru. Diddy recruited Keefy D and the Southside Compton Crips to protect him when he and Biggie were in LA. This led to a gang war between the Southside Crips and the Mob Piru, which inevitably led to the death of Tupac. In 1996 is where the beef between Snoop and Suge would begin. By 1996, Dr. Dre had departed with Death Row, and Snoop wasn't working with Dre anymore. The two had temporarily gone their separate ways ever since Dre got locked up for a DWI. Snoop was working on his sophomore album, The Doggfather, and would work with Daz and the Dogg Pound on the production. The Dogg Pound were just coming off their debut album, Dog Food. Despite the war between the East Coast and West Coast, Snoop and the Dogg Pound had a record on this album called New York, New York, where they were actually paying homage to New York in hopes to settle these tensions. In late 95, Snoop and the Dogg Pound were in New York to film the music video for the track New York, New York. They wanted to speak with Funkmaster Flex to let all the New York rappers know that they are paying homage and to pop out at the video shoot. Biggie actually was told that Snoop and the Dogg Pound were dissing New York, so Biggie would call into Funkmaster Flex at Hot 97 to let New York know that the Dogg Pound were in New York shooting a video and telling Brooklyn to stand up. This was indirectly telling anyone in New York to go and check Snoop and DPG, so that's exactly what happened, and later that night, their trailer ended up getting shot up while on the music video set. No one was struck with bullets. That's when they would change the music video, having Snoop kicking over buildings, dissing New York. Despite Biggie calling a shot on Snoop and the DPG, Snoop was actually still cool with Biggie and the rest of the New York rappers, which got Tupac and Suge tight. After this shooting, Pac and Suge would escalate this beef further, and Snoop actually would diss Biggie on wax in early 96. Snoop recorded a track called Keep It Real Dog, and would take shots at Biggie, mocking his weight and his lazy eye. This track would end up being released in 2009 on the Death Row Lost Sessions Volume 1 project.
You're fat, you're black, you're whack, your style is toe up, plus you got one dead eye.
Another track where Snoop mentioned Bad Boy was on the track Haven't You Heard, which was off of the LBC Cruise album Haven't You Heard. This album would never be released either.
It ain't hard to tell, but it's easy to see, and even though Bad Boy left the industry.
For the majority of '96, Snoop and Tupac were on good terms and had just recorded the legendary track Two of America's Most Wanted, which was set to be on Pac's comeback album All Eyes on Me. This album ended up dropping on February 13th, 1996. After this, it was clear that Tupac was now the guy at Death Row and in hip-hop as a whole. In May of '96, the music video to Pac and Snoop's track Two of America's Most Wanted dropped, so it seemed as if the two were on good terms, but this relationship was about to go sour. Fast forward to September 4th, 1996, Snoop, Tupac, and Suge Knight all attended the '96 MTV VMAs in New York City. Tupac and Snoop presented the award for Best Hard Rock Video. Snoop had an interview that night with Angie Martinez on Hot 97. According to Suge Knight, in an interview with The Art of Dialogue, Pac would storm into Suge's hotel room and listen to the interview on a radio. During the interview, Snoop allegedly said that Tupac was on bullshit and says that he is cool with Biggie and would do a song with him. Now this would of course get Pac pissed, knowing that Snoop is cool with his enemies, and Tupac also saw this as weird considering that Biggie had something to do with the Dog Pound's trailer getting shot up the year prior. According to Suge Knight, the next morning Snoop was downstairs at their hotel and Tupac and Snoop Dogg got into an altercation over this interview.
Throw my boxers on, open the door up, Pac just runs in my room. I'm like, man, what's up? He like, you got a radio? You know, he all pumped up. He cut the radio on, and we listened to Snoop on the radio. Snoop is, you know, saying that's Pac on the bush. He'll do a song with Biggie. He'll do a song with Puffy. He'll do all these songs. So Pac was so mad because Pac loved those dudes. He always would ride for them. And he brought it up. He said, man, I just came to fuck with you. But I put everybody on Death Row. I put everybody on my album. And made sure they was on my album. So when we got, you know, downstairs, Pac took off on Snoop. Pac ran up on him, did what he did. Snoop ran this way, Pac running behind him. I stopped it. We ain't finna be doing all this in New York, making us all look like we some idiots.
After this, Pac and Snoop would not be on good terms, because Tupac definitely wanted Snoop to be on his side against Biggie and Bad Boy. But Snoop and Biggie were friends going all the way back to '93 before Biggie even blew up, as they were all performing together. Snoop stayed neutral and Pac didn't like that. Snoop was more level-headed while Pac was more hot-headed. After this, Snoop and the Dog Pound decided not to go to Vegas with Pac and Suge for the Tyson fight, and this is when Tupac would end up getting shot and killed. According to Snoop, after Pac's death, Snoop and the Dog Pound were in Atlanta. Snoop was at a hotel where he would see Lil Cease in the hotel lobby. Snoop would then find out that Biggie was actually in the hotel as well, so Snoop went to his room and brought some weed. He told Biggie that he knows that he called that shot on him and the Dog Pound in New York that got their trailer shot up, and that he forgives him for it. Then the two would hang out and smoke together.
Because I seen him in a hotel room after he had a car accident. Lil C see me in the lobby. Biggie here? Oh, he is? What room he in? He up there. I got some dope, let me holler at him. Go up to the room.
What did he say?
He couldn't say nothing.
He
couldn't try to clean it up or watch. I heard it. I say, hey, cuz, I know you called that shot on me. They missed. I forgive you.
You said that to him?
On my mama.
Biggie's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, would later say in an interview with The Art of Dialogue that Snoop is actually lying about his alleged relationship with Biggie.
When you be seeing these interviews with Snoop speaking on Biggie, how does that make you feel?
That's propaganda for the media, bruh. That's something that sounds good for the media. You know, I'm the peacemaker. I'm the one that's showing love. I'm the one that's out here, you know, when everybody else is dead. Wasn't Big out at California 3-4 weeks and Snoop never saw him? Snoop never came to smoke nothing with him? Snoop never came to eat nothing with him? But it was a whole lot of love? Come on, man. Just don't add up.
Now this is where Snoop's story doesn't really add up, because Snoop first said that he told Biggie that he knows that it was him that called that shot on him. But in a 2020 interview with Fat Man Scoop, Snoop said during their conversation at the hotel in Atlanta, they never once brought up the Brooklyn shooting at the Dog Pound's trailer.
And I was in Atlanta, and I seen Lil C's in the lobby at the Omni Hotel. And Lil C's is my nigga, Lil C's at the show. We over a bowl of cereal. He became my nigga after that. We was always locked and loaded. So I see C's in the lobby. I say, C's, what Biggie? I want to holler at him. He upstairs. He want to holler at you too. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to come upstairs and holler at him. Let me grab my, get my. C's take me upstairs. Biggie is upstairs in a walker, like what the old people walk around in. He got the little walker sitting at the edge of the bed. And when I walk in the room, we start talking. And then he looked me in my eyes and he say something that, you know what I'm saying? Like he's sad that Tupac is dead. But I can look in his eyes and I can see that he hurt. He didn't even have to say it. I could see that he hurt behind Tupac being dead. This is not a man that's happy or glamorized. This is his friend that's dead, that they had a misunderstanding and he could never get no justice for his emotions, but he's showing me his emotions. And he explaining to me how much he loved Tupac, and I ain't tripping. And not once do we bring up the Brooklyn incident. Because what's understood don't need to be talked about.
Now, I'm not going to say Snoop is completely lying about his relationship with Biggie, but it is kind of weird how his story changed. Snoop also claims that 3 months after that Atlanta meetup, he and Biggie linked up again in the studio in New York.
I go to New York probably about 3 months later. Biggie hit me up. Hey, come by the studio. We got 5 studios popping. Daddy's house or some shit. I'm like, all right, I'm coming. I go to the studio. He got like 4 rooms. He got Easy Mo B in the room, Premier in the room, and he got Stevie J in the room and some other motherfuckers in the room. And then he in one room with like about 30 motherfuckers in there, all army fatigues and beanies, and they smoking some bullshit. Come in with that thing that killed John Wayne. So I pulled my, you understand me? So I pulled my and changed the temperature in the room. So Biggie at the board, he like, hey, check it out. Hold on. Hey, Snoop, I want you to hear this. And the mother push play. And he play that song where it say, dreaming of Learjets, mansions, and coupes, and trying to sell records like Snoop. Oops. And the whole room was like, oh. It was like him letting me know in front of all his homeboys, I f with you, I love you, and I ain't gonna never have a problem with you.
Just 2 months after Tupac's death, on November 12, 1996, Snoop Dogg dropped his highly anticipated sophomore album, The Doggfather. The album would perform worse than Doggystyle, selling 479,000 copies first week, and would receive moderate to negative reviews amongst fans and critics. It seemed as if Snoop had failed to follow up to Doggystyle in the public eye because of how Dre had departed with Death Row and wasn't working on the album. He had a huge part of his magic missing with Dre production. Now, Death Row and Suge Knight kinda screwed over Snoop because exactly a week prior, Tupac's posthumous album, The Don Illuminati, The 7 Day Theory, was released and actually did better than Snoop's album, selling 664,000 copies in the first week. It seemed as if Snoop's album was completely overshadowed by Tupac's posthumous album. After the death of Tupac and the bad reception for Snoop's second album, Snoop knew that Death Row was not right for him anymore. The label had completely fallen from grace, and going into 97, Biggie was clearly the hottest rapper in the world. In February of 97, the year started off terribly for Death Row. Suge Knight was arrested for violating his probation after law enforcement saw the security footage of Suge, Tupac, and others beating down Orlando Anderson on the fatal night that Tupac was killed. Suge was sentenced to 9 years in prison. With the label boss behind bars, Snoop was the only star remaining under the Death Row banner. In February of 97, Snoop Dogg was also arrested after the feds raided his house and found a firearm. Snoop would be sentenced to 3 years probation in exchange for his plea of guilty to charges of being an ex-felon in possession of a gun. Superior Court Judge Jacqueline Connor also ordered Snoop to do 3 public service announcements encouraging teenagers not to carry guns. Snoop also must pay a $1,000 fine that will go to a restitution fund. Snoop was free, but Suge wasn't. While Suge was behind bars, Snoop would do something that would officially make Suge see Snoop as his enemy. On February 23rd, 1997, on an episode of The Steve Harvey Show, Snoop Dogg would appear alongside Puffy, and they would publicly say that there is no more East Coast and West Coast beef in an attempt to calm the tensions down.
Yeah, so like me and my man Snoop was saying, y'all, there ain't no East Coast, West Coast beef.
I swear. We ain't coming to talk about nothing behind us. We come to talk about what's ahead of us.
Yeah.
We here to make a difference, you know what I'm saying? So we want y'all to stay in school and keep y'all heads in y'all books.
Around this time, Snoop Dogg was also realizing that he wasn't being paid for a lot of his work with Death Row, like Deep Cover, The Chronic, Doggystyle, the Dog Pounds album, and much more. Suge actually paid Snoop in gifts rather than what he was owed. A lot of the gifts that Suge bought as Death Row artists were allegedly still in his name, so technically he still owned the gifts.
So publishing checks. When was the first time you seen a publishing check?
What is that?
Ooh.
You mean my first couple of years? What is that? Publishing? You mean I wrote all the Deep Cover, I wrote all the G Thing, I wrote all the Dre Day, I wrote 70% of the Chronic, wrote all damn near 80% of Doggystyle, wrote 70% of Warren G album, wrote 50% of Dog Pound album, wrote 60% of Murder Was a Case. And what is a publishing check? We don't know what that is.
Damn.
I'm Snoop Dogg. I'm the hottest in the world for publishing. What is that?
That was crazy.
And still ain't got it.
They ain't get it.
No way. The deal I was signed to a publishing company called, look on the back of the Chronic album. You can probably pull it up right now. It's called Nothing Going On But Fucking Publishing. I'm not making this shit up.
And when we just, every time that song, none of that shit you get.
What? Only time I get paid is when I perform.
God damn.
But all that other shit, you hear it, see it, nope.
Snoop would begin receiving death threats from Death Row and Suge Knight affiliates after he was seen being buddy-buddy with Puffy. In August of 97, Snoop did a record with Jermaine Dupri called We Just Wanna Party With You for the Men in Black soundtrack. Snoop was supposed to be paid $100,000, but would never end up receiving that money either. Snoop also planned on dropping an EP in 97 called The Dogumentary, but Death Row once again screwed Snoop over by refusing to put the record out, and that would be Snoop's last straw. This is where things get interesting. In that same year of 97, while Suge was behind bars, he did an interview where he would allude to Snoop Dogg allegedly being a snitch to lighten his sentence in his case from earlier in the year and his murder case.
One of the reasons that nigga
Like Snoop.
well, Snoop would never come. I mean, Snoop was on, we beat a murder trial for him, but then he was on probation. Then he got caught with 2 ounces of then he got caught with guns. And each time it's nothing. They're not going to violate him. Because for the street guys know what I'm talking about. There's no puzzle. I mean, if you get a guy that constantly getting in trouble and never going to come to prison, that's because he's an informant. He's a rat, a snitch.
Snoop receiving death threats from Suge and his Death Row affiliates, and now still not being paid for a huge majority of his work. Snoop now feared for his life and came to the conclusion that he no longer wanted to be a part of Death Row. In late 1997 and early 1998, Snoop and Dre would reunite somewhere along the lines. Snoop was initially going to drop an album called Death Row, and the Mac 10 was actually going to give him $1 million to put it out. Snoop explained this in a 2020 interview with Breakfast Club, saying, "Master P saved my life. I was going to put an album out called Death Row, and Mac 10 was going to give me $1 million to put it out. I would go up there to the office to see Mac 10, and when I would go up there, I would have to pass by Master P's No Limit shit. I passed by one day, and Mystical was in there. After one particular studio session, Master P asked how much money Snoop wanted for his work. He replied, 15, meaning $1,500. I come back the next day, Master P wrote me a check for $35,000. So I'm like, oh, I like this dude's style. He called me to his office. He said, what you working on? I said, I got this album called Death Row. This motherfucker hard, but Master P thought it was a terrible idea. Snoop explained, but the No Limit boss closed the door to his office and warned Snoop, you ain't gonna live to see that album out. So Snoop ultimately decided to shelve the album. This album would end up leaking and being bootlegged underground. There are 2 main tracks where Snoop went at Suge and Death Row. The track Don't Do the Crime, Snoop had this to say about Death Row.
I ain't fucking with them no more. Well, shit, I feel the same way y'all feel. Fuck Death Row.
On the track Death Row is Bitches or Death Row Killers, Snoop once again went at Death Row and Suge. On his verse, he would mention Suge Knight by name and rapper YGD the Top Dog.
Top dog, big dog, whatever y'all. Suge Knight, cause your company finna fall.
Snoop mentioned him because Suge was looking to rebuild Death Row and bring on a new era of artists, and Top Dog was a replacement for Snoop Dogg. Suge was clearly trying to create the next Snoop Dogg. He even had the D-O-double-G in his name. In October of '97, Death Row dropped the soundtrack for the film Gang Related, and it had a record on it by YGD the Top Dog called Going Back to Cali. Top Dog raps over Biggie's beat while dissing Bad Boy. A lot of people actually thought that this was Snoop. I mean, just listen to this guy. He's literally a wannabe Snoop.
I'm feeling good off the drink and bad boy. This is Death Row.
Snoop would address this in his Source magazine interview in early '98, but we will get into that in a bit. Let's get back to the track. On his second verse, Snoop once again disses Suge and even goes at Suge's wife, Sharitha Knight, who's actually Snoop's manager during his days with Death Row.
Come twice as nice at night, I'm trite. I got for you and your mother wife, Miss Knight.
In March of 1998, Snoop would officially leave Death Row Records and sign with Master P's No Limit Records. Master P would claim that he went and visited Suge in prison and allegedly gave Suge $2 million to sign him. Suge, on the other hand, would debunk this and said that he would never sign Snoop away for just $2 million.
Second thing I want to clear up is that he stood up there and say he came to visit me in prison. I just heard this.
I met with Suge Knight and said, look, man, what you want for Snoop?
He gave me a couple of bucks, $2 million, which I never would have took no shit like that for Snoop.
What was the number? It was a couple mil.
I got a whole list of anybody ever visit me. You got to be approved. That name on it's not on none of it. Neither to give me anything. And the paperwork is what the paperwork says. And I did a deal with Brian Turner at Party Records and loaned Snoop's services to Priority and gave him the right to loan it to No Limit.
I had to go to the jailhouse to negotiate, not negotiate, but negotiate with Mr. Knight.
So I sit down and I say, look, man, you know, Snoop trying to do his thing. You know, what you want for this deal?
In the April 1998 issue of the Source magazine, Snoop Dogg graced the cover and did a cover story. The cover story was dubbed as Snoop Dogg Wants to Leave Death Row. In this interview, Snoop would publicly speak for the first time about his recent Death Row departure. So how are you getting out of your Death Row contract? I got a contract from 1991, I signed with Future Shock Records on it, and Future Shock was Death Row before we came up with the name of Death Row. And under the 7-year statute, I'm out of my contract, and not only that, they breached me. They ain't paid me, they stole my publishing, and they ain't done shit for me. But f*** a dude, cause the dude didn't know. He was then asked what label he was going to find to put out his new record that he was planning on dropping called Corleone's Revenge, a 213 album, where he would diss Death Row throughout the album. Snoop replied, "No label will want to put it out. That's why I've got to do it myself. If I get some distribution, I would take it. But this album right here is so on the edge that the average record label wouldn't want to put it out because of certain shit I say and the way I say it. They don't want to have nothing to do with that. You're talking about that Death Row Killer song? Is that the first Death Row diss record to come from the West Coast? I ain't never heard nobody talk about Death Row. Period. Besides Luke. Luke was the only one who dissed me and Dre. Eazy-E was trying, but it wasn't nothing major like this shit I'm talking about. You're Death Row's biggest cash cow. So aren't they fighting or trying in some way to keep you from leaving the label? They're trying to take me to court and I'm putting out records right now without their permission, so they must know that they can't beat me in court. But it ain't about that. It's all about I asked for is what I asked for. So let me move forward. Don't hold me down because you're locked up and you feel everything is against you. I'm not against you, homie. I just gotta take care of my family and Death Row can't provide for me right now. What did you ask Death Row for? A lot of shit, man. I ain't never been accounted for at all. As long as I've been rapping for Death Row Records, they've never accounted for me. I never received statements on my money or none of that, man. They bought a dude gifts and shit. What gifts did they get you? A Rolls Royce, a penthouse suite on Wilshire, and a motherfucking Hummer, gold chains, Rolex watches, diamond earrings, hotel suites, anything a dude wanted. Anything to keep your mind off your money. They bought me this and bought me that instead of giving me my money, and when the court case came up, you couldn't afford the lawyers? not really afford the lawyers, but I couldn't fight the system because they have dropped my case and left me for dead. How am I gonna talk shit to the motherfuckers that's putting up the money to fight for my life, and what was important to me was my freedom at the time? So you would have gotten off death row back then if you could have? Hell yeah, cause I seen where they were going. When Dre left, what the fuck am I gonna be there for? I signed a Death Row Records for Dr. Dre, point blank, just like anybody else would have in 1991. When Dre was in NWA and they broke up and he went and did his thing, dudes would have went and signed with Death Row Records, Future Shock Records, whatever the f it was called, for Dr. Dre. I didn't know nobody else. I was in it for the music. What's the main problem? Publishing? Yeah, that's the only problem. They don't want to give that shit back to me because I know what it is now, and I'm signed to Suge Publishing, and he knows I know what it is now, so he don't want to give it back to me. At least Dre never signed to Suge Publishing. Yeah, cause Dre isn't stupid. He already been through NWA. That was my NWA right there. At what point did everything on Death Row start to go bad? It was a good family for a while. Yeah, it was a good family for when all that gangbanging bull was to the side. But then dudes start bringing their homeboys, letting their homeboys be a part of our business. When it was just us and we were doing the music, it was the shit. I was at fault because so many of my homeboys came and influenced and fucked some shit up too. But all of us was at fault when we started bringing our homeboys who took the shit sideways and had dudes doing stupid shit. That's why dudes is where they are at right now. Was there any conflict between you and Suge because he was a blood and you were a Crip? Never no conflict, we got over that from day one. But a lot of times our homeboys had problems with it and conflicts. That's where shit went bad because some of the homies couldn't understand how I could be a Crip and he could be a blood and we could just chill and make money and not hate each other. Suge always let a dude represent. He never told me to stop representing Crip. He never tried to make me change and represent his hood and claim what he claimed. He was the best businessman in the world for me at first. I can't take nothing away from him there. He put me in situations where all I had to do was shine and do what I do best. Without his push, I couldn't have been there. That's real shit that I got from, learned from him, appreciated from him. But then there's bad shit as well. That's part of life. It's like a marriage. It's good and it's bad, and you take the good with the bad. Pull over here. I want to get some diapers. If you compare your two albums, Suge's name blows up on the back and in the booklet to be bigger than your name. Exactly. His name is bigger than mine on my record. His name is all over my record. Suge Publishing, executive producer, Suge Knight, and he didn't do a motherfucking thing in the studio. No records, no producing, none of that. But I'm wrong for wanting my name on there, my logo on there, but Tupac can get on his shit, but then get mysteriously killed a couple of months later? So I say, man, those dudes was bad businessmen. It was fun while it lasted, but I'm older and much wiser, and I'm ready to move on with my life. I feel those motherfuckers shouldn't be mad at me. It's like an athlete. If Michael Jordan didn't want to play for the Chicago Bulls, and he won those motherfuckers 7 championships, they gotta let him fucking go. I won these motherfuckers 7 championships. I've been down with them since 1991. It's 1998. You have so many lyrics on the new record rapping about independence and talking about people like Master P. Do you feel that you're free now? Independence is freedom because you're able to do what you gotta do when you want to. I look at it like I helped Death Row build an empire. I could have been one of the partners in the company when Dre left. Dudes know I was there when Death Row started. Suge could have pulled me to the side and said, Snoop, there goes 20% of Death Row. Why don't you take a little bit of Dre's share? You were here from the beginning. You made Death Row with me. Here's 20% of the company. Better that than dude could have said, here's 15%, here's 10%, here's 5%, here's 2%, here's 1%. Dude didn't even give me 1% of Death Row. And everybody in the industry, in the world, on the streets, in the pen knows you never heard of Death Row till you heard of Snoop Dogg. So how you gonna cheat me out of mine? And then don't pay me. And then got all my shit tied up in your name and Miss Knight? All kind of shit that they try to do to me. They just tried to use me. Did you ever tell Suge that you wanted a piece of the company? I shouldn't have had to tell him. He was the business. I was just the artist. Didn't Death Row freeze your assets because of it? Man, they haven't paid me since October. That's why I don't give a fuck about Death Row right now. I don't give a fuck about going on the record. I'll say it on TV and in public. Y'all should just let me go. If you had let me go, I would have never said fuck Death Row. But y'all don't even want to let a dude go. You want to hold on to me like I'm a slave or some shit. This is 1998. This ain't 1898. It's crazy because I know when Dr. Dre left, they tried to make all kinds of false accusations about him, trying to say that the dude's gay and all kind of shit. Man, dudes be trying to do all kind of shit to bring a dude down when a dude don't want to be with him no more. I wonder what they're gonna say about me now. That's why I'm shooting off hit rocks at their ass before they say something about me. I'm just telling the truth though. I ain't making up shit. I'm just straight telling the truth, and I'm getting back with Dre. We're gonna make some motherfucking fucking hit records, and anybody got a problem with it, dude, you all know where we at. I heard that new song you did with Dre the other day, Zoom Zoom, on the internet. I ain't on that song no more. Interscope Records took me off and to put LL Cool J on it because Death Row wouldn't clear me on the record as far as doing shit with Dre, because, you know, they hate Dre because Dre left. Now they're gonna be hating me. That's why I'm doing records about them before they even get at me. I heard what Suge said about me in the Source magazine. What'd he say? That Tupac didn't like me or something? What's happening with the documentary EP? Death Row was supposed to release it last year. Death Row or Interscope or somebody f***ed me over. They had me put together a tight-ass EP and promote it and do a song with Rage Against the Machine. It was the #1 song on K-Rock. I did Lollapalooza and Take About It. Midnight Love was blowing up, and then they f***ed around and didn't put the record out. That was the last straw, right there, that made me want to leave, seeing how they mishandled the Doggfather album. I sold 2 million records. I'm thankful for that, and I'm happy and I'm satisfied. I'm not upset with nothing. I thank those people that bought it and appreciate it, and those that didn't, f*** y'all. I was satisfied with that project, and Documentary was just a follow-up attempt to show people that I hadn't went nowhere, but it seemed like Death Row didn't want me to succeed no more. They didn't want me to succeed no more. They didn't want me to put out no records out anymore. Then I started trying to do records with other artists, and for instance, the song I did with Jermaine Dupri. I think I was supposed to get $100,000 for that song, and Death Row ended up getting the money, and I didn't get shit. And I didn't get to do the video because Death Row signed on the papers saying that they would do it. Then on the last day they changed their mind, so I couldn't do the video with JD. That's why he had to do the remix with Usher and Debrat. And I'm like, man, they just did too much shit to me. But still, what's the advantage in not releasing Documentary? Because it's a guaranteed instant #1 record for Death Row. I don't know. I guess they're trying to make me suffer, man, because they know I can't make no money without no records. But why do they want to make you suffer in the first place? I don't know, man. I'm just trying to be a child of God and do the right things and make good music. You see what I'm about. You're at my house right there. There ain't no 34 security people over here. It's me, my 2 kids, and my dogs in the backyard. We're just kicking it. I'm not in all that extra shit, man. What else did Death Row keep you from doing that you want to do now? It was tours, it was merchandising, it was all kind of shit that they kept away from me. It was movies. I didn't know that people want to do movies with me. I look at Menace to Society. Them motherfuckers wanted me to be in that movie because the Hewitt brothers is my homeboys. I look at movies that came out that I could have been in or people wanted me to be in, but they was too scared to get at Suge or too scared to get at me because that's the image that we had. We wouldn't be f***ed with. We only did chosen shit. I heard Death Row put out a record from a guy, Top Dog. I think that's his name, YGD the Top Dog, where he's talking about Puffy and he sounds like me. Some dudes in New York think that's me. That ain't me. I love Puffy Combs. That's some fake dude Suge Knight got to sound like me. That's why God ain't blessing Suge Knight, cause he's acting like the devil right now. Have people said shit to you thinking that you did that song? I had a talk with Puffy, and Puffy told me that some of the dudes thought it was me, but he was like, dude, I know it isn't you, dog. I wouldn't even bust on no whack ass shit like that. I'm trying to make a song with Puffy, not talking about him. Now that you're off Death Row, would you do a Bad Boy collaboration? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do. When he gets this interview, holla at me. Let's make something happen. I did things with Jermaine Dupri, it turned out well. I did things with Mac 10, Ice Cube, Westside Connection. I'm just trying to do things. When I get on my new label, I'm planning to holler at Warren G, Premier, Dre, Jermaine Dupri, RZA, whoever got the tightest beats. I want to do a song with Lil' Kim. I got this badass motherfucking record I want to do with her. Some X-rated shit. And I'm making movies for home video. So anybody out there with some money and wants to get behind me on these home video projects, holler at a dude. The next month, after this article in May of 1998, Death Row would have enough of hearing Snoop's dissing on his unreleased songs, and his article, so they would decide to confront Snoop face to face. In early May of 1998, Master P was hosting a comedy jam for his upcoming comedy film I Got the Hookup at the Universal Amphitheater in Universal City, California. In between the comedy show, the No Limit Records roster would perform. Snoop, on the other hand, was in the green room where a confrontation with the Death Row guys would occur. Now, there are 2 sides of this story, so first, we'll start with Snoop's side of the story. According to Snoop, he and Daz were chilling in the green room when a bunch of Suge's goons would confront him. As Snoop was sitting surrounded by 7 of Suge's goons, the No Limit artist had already hit the stage. The goons then told Snoop that he owed Suge an apology. Snoop would begin mouthing off to them saying, Suge Knight. Then Snoop said that one of them tried hitting him, but missed, so Snoop said he got up out of there to avoid being jumped by Suge's goons. As Snoop was running, all hell broke loose at the event due to a DJ playing gunshots on one of the songs, and the No Limit artists ran off stage to go check on Snoop after they got word about what was happening. Snoop would eventually run into the police, and he was then searched, and it was discovered that Snoop had weed on him, so he and Daz would be arrested. In the police report, Snoop also accused Suge Knight of being the man that actually killed Tupac or had something to do with Pac's death. Reggie Wright Jr., who claimed to be present that night and accompanying Suge's goons, told a completely different story. In an interview with Vlad, Reggie Wright Jr. claims that they walked in to confront Snoop about the dissing he was doing on his unreleased tracks. Then one of Suge's goons slapped Snoop, causing him to run.
We were there just to talk to Snoop because he was starting to diss Suge, and so I was just going to talk to Snoop to say, hey, why you dissing the homie? You know, he's in jail, and he was kind of high and mouthing it and all that time. And then that's when Trayvon stopped Snoop, and Snoop took off and ran.
After this incident, Daz did not want anything to do with Death Row anymore after they just confronted Snoop like that, despite still being signed to the label. Daz was scheduled to film the music video for his track It Might Sound Crazy, but due to him not wanting to work with Death Row, he refused to shoot the video, so Death Row decided to do an animated music video instead. Daz would become more infuriated with Death Row after having a meeting with Suge in prison to discuss his next album. Suge told Daz to work on producing and refused to do another solo project with Daz, and this would be when Daz was officially done with Death Row. Daz walked out and would no longer be with Death Row. Later that summer, on August 4th, 1998, Snoop Dogg dropped his debut album with No Limit called The Game Is to Be Sold, Not to Be Told. This album was very successful, selling 520,000 copies in the first week, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard. By October of 98, the album would be certified double platinum, so it seemed as if Snoop had made the right choice by leaving Death Row and doing his thing over at No Limit. In late 98, Suge did some grimy shit. On November 24th, 1998, Tupac's posthumous Greatest Hits album was released. Now on this album appeared the track All About You with Snoop Dogg, but there was also a Greatest Hits version where YGD the Top Dog, the Snoop Dogg clone, would replace Snoop himself on this track. Suge grimy as shit for that. As 1998 came to a close, Snoop Dogg had made a comeback and was back selling millions of records, and Suge Knight was not happy about this. So Suge had something in 1999 in store for Snoop. In April of 1999, Snoop and DJ Quick were set to perform together at the National Orange Show Event Center in San Bernardino, California. Swoop G and his homies decided to show up to confront Snoop for a Death Row chain that they were promised. According to Swoop G, he had around 30 people with them, and they managed to get in the venue and got backstage. People from Snoop's entourage started noticing Swoop G and his entourage were present as they were on stage. Swoop G and his entourage allegedly rushed the stage, and this is when an altercation occurred between Snoop, Daz, his crew, and Swoop G and his crew. Once Snoop recognized Swoop G and his Chronic 2000 Death Row jacket, he punched Swoop G in the face, and Swoop G slapped Snoop Dogg back. Daz then allegedly grabbed a speaker and hit Swoop G with it, and this was all allegedly caught on tape by DJ Quick.
Nighttime come, everybody pull up. We see the everybody on the side of the stage, you know, they in their little rooms and shit. So my cousins them come in, hella thick. My sisters with them, all my family, they like, we finna f this up. Death Row jacket on, Chronic 2000 jacket on, we finna put this shit on camera. Cuz finna get smacked. So they go on stage, we on the side of the stage, we chilling all of them. They don't even know Cup them over here. They done came from backstage thinking they finna get on the stage and rock they shit. They don't even see all these yet. When from his entourage from the hood start noticing on the side of the stage from the hood, you can see the whole change. Like, start tapping niggas like, cuz that old. So now you got them knowing, so I'm like, let's go. And they still like, no, hold on, cuz, let them feel the pressure, cuz. So I'm like, what pressure? Cuz, we ain't doing nothing. I jump on stage. I get right next to Snoop in the front of the stage. Turn around to the back of the Chronic 2000 jacket to the stage, to the crowd. So Snoop, look, so he finally recognized, he stopped, the music still playing, he stopped rapping like, that nigga I mean, it was like the weakest punch I ever seen a nigga throw. Oh, God. No cap. Like, oh, dead homies, that threw a punch. And you know, Snoop tall and lanky, so you gotta come from Mississippi to get some power. They grab him, boom. So when they grab him, the dads grab one of the speakers and pull it down on me.
During this time, Dre and Snoop had fully reunited as Dr. Dre was finally getting ready to drop his sophomore album, which was initially going to be titled The Chronic 2, A New World Order, Papa's Got a Brand New Funk. That concept was scrapped entirely as Dre left Death Row in '96, so he decided that the album would be dropping in late 1999 and wanted to call it The Chronic 2000. With the signing of his new Aftermath artist, Eminem, who dropped his debut album The Slim Shady LP in February of '99, he would become a megastar. Suge was absolutely tight at Eminem and Dre's newly found success away from Death Row, so he pulled some more grimy shit. Since Death Row owned the trademark for the Chronic name, Suge decided to try and sabotage Dre's album by taking the name. On May 4th, 1999, Death Row dropped the compilation album Suge Knight Represents Chronic 2000 Still Smokin'. Now, if stealing Dre's album title wasn't enough, a lot of these tracks have disses towards Snoop Dogg. On the track Don't Forget Where You Came From by Long Beach rapper Swoop G, he had some words for Snoop. On the second verse, Swoop G continues dissing Snoop when he seemingly referenced Snoop running from Suge's goons last year at Master P's comedy event. Then he mentioned an alleged incident where Snoop got his chin bruised at a video shoot. Swoop G spoke on this years later in an interview, claiming that his cousin, who also went by the name Swoop G, allegedly hit Snoop because he owed him $20,000. On the track Easy to Be a Soldier When There Ain't No War, on his verse, Lil C Style went at Snoop Dogg. At the end of the verse, Lil C Style has a message for Snoop and Master P. Now, on this album was a track titled Cinderfella by the Snoop Dogg clone YGD the Top Dog. This track actually sounded extremely similar to a track that would end up on Snoop's second album with No Limit Top Dog. The track is called Snoopafella. This was released just a week after the Chronic 2000.
Once upon a time in a place to be, on the dark side of the CPT, there lived the young G. Once upon a time in the LBC, on the east side off of 21 Street, there lived a young man.
So you're probably wondering how Top Dog would be able to bite Snoop Dogg if the song was not released. Well, if you know Suge, he always has insiders steal other people's records and has been doing this for years. Suge definitely had insiders in Snoop's camp informing him about the existence of this track, and Suge went ahead, stole the title, and made the song sound similar with his Snoop replacement, Top Dog. In the music video for the track, there's even a diss to Snoop when Top Dog is seen wearing a No Limit chain, but then he takes it off. A Suge Knight lookalike magically puts a Death Row chain on him. On that same album, No Limit Top Dog, which dropped on May 11th, 1999, there was some jabs thrown at Death Row. On the track Down From My Ends, on his verse, Snoop throws shots at Top Dog for being a clone of him.
Some of these is too, and some of these look just like you.
On the original version of the track, Gangsta Ride, Snoop would take more shots at YGD the Top Dog.
If I hear another trying to sound like me, say Simon Simmons.
Snoop would then directly name drop Swoop G and Lil C Style.
What's up with niggas, Lil Style and Swoop G? I heard they tried to diss. They on my bitch list.
Later that summer, on August 18th, 1999, at the 1999 Source Awards in LA, Snoop would be nominated for Artist of the Year. Snoop would also perform his track, Bitch Please. Suge's goons decided to show up in the crowd. Suge did this to not only intimidate Snoop, but also Eminem, as M was Dre's new artist that Suge wanted to sign to Death Row, seeing how successful M's debut was. The next month, on September 26, 1999, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg had their reunion concert in Hawaii, along with Eminem, Nate Dogg, Exhibit, Warren G, and more. This was to build hype for Dre's upcoming, long-awaited sophomore album, which was renamed to 2001 due to Suge taking his name Chronic 2000 as a way to sabotage and possibly extort Dre into paying for rights to the name. According to Reggie Wright, he got word of the concert before it happened and informed Suge, Reggie then got a bunch of Death Row's goons and actually flew to Hawaii to confront Snoop and company. On the flight to Hawaii, Reggie Wright and the rest of the Death Row goons ended up on the same flight as Snoop and his crew. The Death Row goons and Snoop got into a verbal altercation, talking back and forth. The Death Row goons were even allegedly spitting on Snoop on the plane. Reggie and his goons followed Snoop and company to their hotel room, and they were also trying to get tickets to the event, but were denied tickets by Jimmy Iovine. On the flight back to LA, Reggie and his goons were now on the same flight as Eminem and his bodyguard. Reggie's goons were now intimidating Eminem. The next year, in June of 2000, Death Row dropped a VHS called Death Row Uncut Too Gangsta for TV, which included many tracks by Snoop and Dre during their run with Death Row. In between the tracks, they had a bunch of people in a car doing skits dissing Snoop and Dre. At one point in this, it got real personal when the people from Death Row would go to Dre and Snoop's house and show their homes and addresses on camera. Jimmy Iovine actually paid Death Row $500,000 to remove Dre and Snoop's address from the first release of the VHS. The next month of August of 2000, there was another confrontation, this time at the 2000 Source Awards. Dre and Snoop were going to receive some awards that night, to which Suge and Death Row tried stopping. Suge called in the Mob Piru and also had a lot of Crips, including Swoop G and his entourage. In the lobby, Swoop G and his crew got into an altercation with a bunch of Rollin' 60s Crips in the lobby. A huge fight would break out between Death Row and the Rollin' 60s, which would spill on the stage as Snoop would leave out of the back door of the venue, and the police even intervened during this altercation. The next month, on September 26, 2000, Death Row dropped the compilation album Too Gangsta for Radio, and on this album there would of course be disses towards Snoop. Now there were also disses aimed at Dre and Eminem, but I will cover that in another video, so stay tuned for that. On the track titled F Dre, on his verse, Swoop G has some words for Snoop, Nate Dogg, and Eminem.
Nate Dogg, Eminem, and Snoop, and all them bitch motherfuckers that ride with you.
On the track Real Type Gangsta by Max Sean, he went at Snoop. In the booklet for the CD, Suge included an alleged letter that Snoop Dogg wrote to Suge Knight while he was incarcerated in that same year of 2000. The letter reads, "To Big Dog from Snoop Dogg. I know that you're surprised to get this kite from me. Last time we hollered was in October of 1996. I tried to roll up on you when you was in county jail, but you know, Popo wouldn't let me in. Big Dog, word on the street is that we got drama. But until I hear that from you, bullshit goes over my head. I ain't sending you this kite to start no shit. That's Daz and Dre, or those other motherfuckers who pop shit because they hear you're about to get out. I was hollering at you because I heard you was telling motherfuckers I rent Crips to hang out with me. I don't know where that came from. The dudes that hang with me are Long Beach Crips. All they need is to get high, and they'll do anything. Now, I know, ever since you've been hollering at that dude, Kieta Rock, you heard I'm the shot caller for the Rollin' 60s, so that means I don't have to pay them shit. They ain't nothing but some Snoop Dogg groupies anyway. Holla back at me so we can put this behind us. Big Snoop Dogg." Now, a lot of people say that this letter is fake, and that Suge did this to once again try and sabotage Snoop's rep. But this has not been confirmed by anyone if it is real or fake, but to me, it sounds fake. During this time, Snoop was gearing up to drop his 5th studio album and 3rd album with No Limit called The Last Meal. Suge would do some crazy shit here. During the build-up for Snoop's album The Last Meal, which was set for a December 2000 release, Death Row dropped a Snoop Dogg compilation album of tracks from Snoop's days on Death Row called Dead Man Walkin' in order to profit off of Snoop's new album release buzz and sabotage it. The title itself was a direct threat to Snoop Dogg, calling him a dead man walking, displaying Snoop wearing red due to Suge's blood affiliations. The back cover showed a still capture of Snoop laying in a coffin from the Murder Was the Case music video, again, possibly saying that if Snoop keeps dissing, that's where he'll end up. Suge Knight would end up getting his hands on the advanced version of Snoop's album, so we decided to leak it on December 1st, 2000, posting it in its entirety on Death Row's website 2 weeks before its scheduled release date of December 19th. Suge made all of the tracks from the album downloadable in MP3 format. In early 2001, Suge Knight would be informed that he would be getting granted an early release of August 2001. Death Row would take to their website to announce that he is coming home while sending a terrifying threat to Snoop Dogg, saying that all dogs run and hide with gunshots being heard and dogs crying, followed by the words, "Suge is coming home." During this time in early 2001, Snoop Dogg had recorded a track titled So Hard, and on this track, he would respond to Suge Knight. Snoop also referenced the Dead Man Walkin' album that Suge and Death Row had put out in October of 2000.
Why you say I'm a dead man? Keep talking. Don't even trip, doggy dog. They keep walking, cause they keep stalking.
Snoop would continue throwing shots at Suge, throwing his wife in the mix, and says that Suge is doing time at Camp Snoopy as an inmate in prison.
Your wife on my groupie, and you doing time in Camp Snoopy with all them snitches.
Snoop closes out the track responding to Suge's "All Dogs Run and Hide" message on the Death Row website.
I ain't running and I ain't hiding. I'm east side for life. Y'all know where to find me.
Then Snoop has some words directly for Suge Knight.
Suge Knight is a biatch.
A couple of months later, on May 29th, 2001, Snoop Dogg appeared on the soundtrack for the film What's the Worst That Can Happen, and on this he had a track titled What They Say, and on this track it's speculated that he sent subliminal shots at Suge Knight and his wife.
Keep my name out your mouth and my business out the streets. You geek, your freak is a freak. I never crept with the.
A couple of months later, on July 31st, 2001, the Eastsiders dropped their album Deuces and Trays, the old-fashioned way. On the track Doghouse in Your Mouth, there was some disses towards Death Row. Rough Dog mentions the incident with Death Row that occurred a year prior at the 2000 Source Awards.
And ask them the Source Awards when I caught them.
Trey D then had some words for Death Row.
It's going down, Doghouse gangsta style. If Death Row, we'll take them out.
The next week, on August 6, 2001, Suge Knight would officially be released from prison after serving over 4 years. After being released from prison, Suge decided to completely rebrand Death Row, changing the name to The Row Records. Suge would have a conversation with Kurupt and offered Kurupt a position at The Row to re-sign and become the new vice president of the label for $3 million. Kurupt would accept this position, which would not sit well with Snoop and Daz, causing a rift in the Dog Pound. On the May 2002 issue of the XXL magazine, Suge Knight, Crooked I, Nina, Eastwood, and Kurupt appeared on the cover of the XXL magazine dubbed as Suge Knight and His New Heavy Hitters. On page 7, it shows a picture of Suge flashing a new chain with the new The Row logo on it dubbed Destroy and Rebuild. People have speculated that making Kurupt the new vice president of Death Row was intended to break up the Dog Pound. Once again, Suge trying to mess with Snoop. That summer, on August 13th, 2002, Snoop Dogg dropped the compilation album Doggystyle All-Stars Welcome to the House Volume 1. On this is a track called The Strong Will Eat the Weak, and Snoop once again takes shots at Suge Knight.
Knowing damn well that you're gonna have to see me sooner or later, you big fat hater.
On the second verse, Snoop seems to be taking shots at Kurupt, calling him a traitor for joining Death Row.
Them weak on your team, straight traitors. They can't go back to the set.
Now, these disses were nothing compared to what Snoop Dogg had in store for Suge and Death Row. Later that year, on November 26, 2002, Snoop Dogg dropped his album Paid the Cost to Be the Boss. On this album is a track titled Pimp Slapped. This track was a full-length diss track towards Suge, Kurupt, and the rest of Death Row. Snoop starts off the track making it clear that his beef with Suge has nothing to do with any Bloods in LA, and that he has love for some Bloods. Throughout the track, Snoop refers to Suge as Simon because this was a nickname given to Suge derived from the popular game Simon Says, because when Suge gave orders to people, they responded by following his commands, like Simon Says.
I got a couple relatives up off of Crenshaw. This is about me and Simon, not me and y'all.
Later in the verse, Snoop says that Suge can't do him like he did Exhibit. If you know, Suge had Exhibit brutally jumped a couple of years prior.
And skirt up Wilshire Boulevard. I'm not Exhibit, you can't pull my card.
Then Snoop says that he was hanging with Suge's groupies while he was imprisoned, which he calls Camp Snoopy, and questions why Suge isn't in level 4 prison if he's so hardcore.
All your groupies when you was doing time in Camp Snoopy with the and snitches.
Then Snoop suggests that Suge himself needs to start rapping because he's the biggest star on Death Row at that point.
I got the word on you, Simon. You need to just start rhyming cause you the biggest star on your label.
Then Snoop says that he didn't get paid for the track Deep Cover and says that if Suge keeps talking, he will finish what he started at Death Row.
And I still ain't been paid for 187 on the cop. I started your shit, I will end your.
On the chorus, Snoop says that Suge constantly tries sabotaging him because he's simply jealous of all the money that Snoop is making.
It all boils down to the fact that you're jealous how my paper stack. Jealous ass, nigga.
On the second verse, Snoop goes directly at Suge Knight and even his wife, then saying that Suge Knight messed up the music industry.
This a bitch like his wife. Suge Knight's a bitch and that's on my life. Cause you f***ed up the industry.
Snoop then calls out the rest of Death Row and mentions Kurupt by name.
Your rappers and artists tell them, shut it up. Cause I f*** every last one of them up. Especially Kurupt.
On the outro of the track, Snoop included a real voice message of a guy named Big Jim Bob, who was from Campanella Park, Peru, and on the message he tells Snoop to expose Suge. Big Jim Bob would end up suing Snoop for including this voice message in March of 2003. On March 11, 2003, The Row released the soundtrack for the movie Dysfunctional Family. On this is a track titled The Row Y'all Hoes, with the new Death Row artists Spider Loc, Eastwood, and Gangsta Rid. This track would be a response to Snoop Dogg's Pimp Slapped. Eastwood starts off the first verse name-dropping Snoop.
What? You wasn't gangsta enough for the road? Spitting envy on your record, Snoop Dogg, you a how could you ever be a leader?
Then he got real disrespectful, saying that Snoop's son Spanky isn't even his.
You still ain't tripping with a death row wife and death row kids and everybody knowing that Spanky ain't his.
On the post-chorus, Eastwood had some words for Superfly, Snoop, and Daz.
Superfly, you, Dillinger, you, Snoop Dogg, eater.
On the second verse, Spider Loc continues by going at Snoop.
Trady told me that you's a Snoop Dogg.
After his verse, Spider Loc even mentioned Snoop's mom, Beverly.
Hey Snoop, that's why I'm f***ing your mom's Beverly.
On the third verse, Gangsta Rid went in on Snoop Dogg.
Cornrows, he would always bark about this and that. When it came down to it, that man would never scrap.
Then saying that they weren't gonna diss until they heard Pimp Slapped.
Yo boy Snoop don't play Russian roulette with his mouth. Wasn't thinking about the diss until we heard Pimp Slap.
At the end of the track, Eastwood has some words for Snoop.
Pimp Slap. How you gonna pimp slap a when you too small for the wife beater?
During this time, Death Row artist Crooked I recorded a full-length response to Pimp Slap called Slap Back, which would end up never being released but later leaked.
Aiming it at your mama and kids, cause I'm a monster. Snoop Dogg, eat a God stomp ya.
Snoop and Daz got wind of this, so they responded. On May 6, 2003, Daz dropped his album DPGC, You Know What I'm Throwing Up, and this album had multiple disses towards Suge and Death Row. On the public service announcement skit, Snoop has a message for Suge Knight.
I just want to say Suge Knight's a bitch, and everybody down with him can eat a motherfucking straight up.
This track was the intro for the track You Ain't Shit, which Daz would go at Kurupt and Suge Knight.
You ain't shit, Suge Knight, you bitch, you ain't shit.
On his verse, he has more words for Suge and Kurupt, referring to himself as a death row killer.
Motherfucker, I'm a death row killer. Suge Knight can die too. Kurupt, dumb Gotti. It's on when we find you.
At the end of the track, on the outro, Daz has a bold message for Suge, even addressing him by his government name, Marion.
I want to say what's up to that eating Marion. You know, you done sucked my plenty of times, boy.
On the self-titled track, DPGC, You Know What I'm Throwing Up, Snoop has some more words for Suge Knight.
Suge Knight is a fat bitch.
On the outro, Snoop went off on Suge.
Oh yeah, by the way, Suge Knight is a fat, sucking, hating ass.
Then mentioned his wife at the time, singer and former Ruthless Records artist, Miss Chalet, who is Dr. Dre's ex-wife, and they even have a child together.
Your wife too. No singing that bitch. Got Dr. Dre on her breath.
The next month, in June 2003, Snoop Dogg dropped the mixtape Welcome to the Church Volume 1, and on this mixtape, he would go at Suge and Death Row. On the track Hater in You, on the first verse, he goes at Suge.
She didn't know I knew it. She used to with that Suge in 96 or 97.
Later on in the verse, he mentioned Suge by name once again. Snoop went real disrespectful, mentioning Suge's baby mama.
I love breaking Suge Knight and his bras, just like breaking the laws. I used to have his baby mama like taking it off.
On the second verse, Snoop mentions the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack where Death Row dissed him, saying that Death Row is a dysfunctional family itself.
Cause you say you can't stand me, your whole rap label is a dysfunctional family.
On the outro, Snoop has more words for Suge.
Use a and by the way, your baby mama sucked some good Suge.
On the track LBCing It Up with Nate Dogg and Lil Half Dead, on his verse, Lil Half Dead went at death row.
We trust no and trust no. We bust on and death row.
That same month of June 2003, Snoop Dogg and DJ Who Kid dropped the mixtape West Side Reloaded. On this mixtape, Daz had a track called Catch You in the Club, which saw Daz rapping over 50 Cent's track In the Club. On the intro, Daz takes shots at Kurupt and Suge. Later in 2003, Daz and Snoop dropped a DVD called The Row Killer. On this DVD, in between the music video for the track DPGC, You Know What I'm Throwing Up, a Suge Knight lookalike depicts Suge getting set up by Daz, which eventually leads to him being kidnapped and thrown in a trunk. This DVD had the music videos for Daz's track You Ain't Shit and Snoop's track Pimp Slapped. In the video for Pimp Slapped, a Suge Knight lookalike can be seen behind Snoop Dogg. Kurupt would get wind of these disses, so he decided to respond himself. During this time, Kurupt recorded a response diss track towards Snoop, Daz, and the rest of their camp called No Vaseline Part 2. This track would end up bootlegged on the Against the Grain EP in 2007. On this track, Kurupt pays homage to Ice Cube's legendary diss track No Vaseline, except with recordings of Daz and Snoop's disses towards him in Death Row. The first verse is dedicated to dissing Superfly.
Goddamn, I'm glad y'all said it all. They call you Superfly, your name's Super Soft.
The second verse, Kurupt goes at Daz.
And now Snoop's is smelling like bad ass. Act like a get treated like one.
And finally, the third verse is dedicated to dissing Snoop.
Should've known you was a from the first day, looking with them fake ass booty glasses.
On March 30th, 2004, Kurupt dropped the compilation album Originals, and on this is a track called Eat a Dick, Daz. On this track, Kurupt once again goes at Daz.
Daz, eat a dick, shut the fuck up. Now ain't this a he won't shut the fuck up.
After this, in the year of 2005, Snoop had a change of pace and was looking to put an end to the beef. On April 14th, 2005, Snoop Dogg hosted a one-day peace summit between feuding West Coast hip-hop artists to ensure conflicts don't cut their earnings. Snoop announced that he ended longtime beef with Suge Knight, as well as put issues aside with J.O. Felony and Kurupt, who has now rejoined the Dog Pound. Artists like The Game, Exhibit, DOC, and Young MC attended the event. Snoop said, quote, "It was me relaying to them that the banging in the business ain't making us no money. If we come together and move as one unit, money will be there, and the opportunity to shine will be there. What it's all about is saying, I'm from the West Coast, you're from the West Coast. Let me get your number, we could probably do some music together. It ain't always cool to be gangster to your homeboys." After this, the Dog Pound would squash the beef, and they even graced the cover of the July 2005 issue of The Source magazine, dubbed as The Return of the Gangsters. According to Snoop, he and Suge met at a hotel in Vegas to squash the beef. According to Snoop, he and his security guard were rolling through Vegas when they happened to run into Suge. Though Snoop's big homie was quick to step forward, Suge swore he meant no ill will. Still, the animosity between the men was still running high, by Dogg's own admission. Quote, "I had dudes who they seen him before I did." And then Snoop addressed Suge saying, quote, "When I finish the little woo-wop I'm with, I'm gonna have my folks come tell you what room I'm in. Then when you come up to my room, ain't gonna be nobody in there, just me and you." 45 minutes later, Snoop and Suge were having a face-to-face. "Nobody in there except me and my dude Superfly," revealed Snoop. "Superfly ain't no threat, he's just a producer dude who wants to hear exactly what's happening. So Suge and I are chopping it up, and the whole conversation is, I loved you, dude, I could have saved you. I had nothing but love for you." And his conversation is, "Dude, I loved you. I ain't got nothing but love for you." Snoop retorts with a harsh but fair question. "Why did you try to get me popped if you loved me? You know what? I forgive you. I ain't gonna do nothing to you. There's dudes outside that want your head right now. They ain't gonna do nothing to you. You gonna walk on out of here and we gonna be cool from this day forward." And we've been straight. Fast forward a couple years later, on June 24th, 2008, Snoop dropped a DVD called Big Snoop Dogg Presents The Adventures of the Blue Carpet Treatment. This DVD included an animated music video from an unreleased Snoop Dogg song recorded in the mid-90s called Snooperman. In this music video, Snoop can be seen defeating a villain that looks just like Suge Knight. Now, this squashing of the beef might not have lasted too long, because after Suge's incarceration in 2015 for murder, he was eventually sentenced to 28 years in prison. Long after Suge's incarceration, in February of 2022, Snoop would have the final laugh in the beef when he would buy Death Row Records. Now, during this time, Suge would begin doing call-in interviews from prison and started his own podcast. In April of 2023, Suge claimed that Snoop's ownership of Death Row is illegal. Quote, Snoop has a partner, which is Michael Harris, right? If you look at it, they committed bankruptcy fraud. I didn't lose my company by doing anything wrong. They went in and the lawyer didn't show up and they got a default judgment. I settled the judgment. They turned around and said I didn't settle the judgment. On February 6, 2024, an article that Vlad TV posted on IG read that Suge made shocking accusations on his new podcast about Diddy, Russell Simmons, Andre Harrell, and Dr. Dre. Snoop would comment under the post reacting to it saying, "Shake my head, I'm praying for that brother that he finds peace." Suge saw this and got tight, so he hopped on Twitter to fire back, reposting the comment writing, "Show that agreement or proof of payment and I'll shut up, bet you can't." So once again, commenting on Snoop buying Death Row, clearly not happy that Snoop is the new owner. Then another tweet, getting real personal, posting an alleged photo of Snoop's wife in Hawaii with another man, writing, "You pray for me, Snoop Dogg? Okay, I'll pray your wife stop going to Hawaii with other men." Then posting a video of Snoop, captioned, "If you only could act like this when the camera rolling, Snoop Dogg," then putting the hashtag fake Crip. A couple of weeks later, in March of 2024, Suge Knight would claim that Snoop, Diddy, and Dr. Dre are in a secret society. Snoop responded by commenting on a post on IG reporting the news simply with some emojis. After that, the next month in April of 2024, on his podcast, Suge would claim that Snoop was allegedly involved in Tupac's murder. According to a blog post, Suge basically says that Snoop convinced the members of the Dog Pound not to go to Las Vegas for the Tyson fight because Snoop knew something was going down. Daz and Kurupt listened and stayed in LA, but Nate Dogg was determined to go. Snoop warned Nate Dogg to watch his back and not to be around the Death Row folks. Suge also says that there was no one connected with Death Row who would have immediately called Snoop to let him know Pac had been shot, so Suge ponders why Snoop would have been listening into what was happening in Vegas. A lot of people are also suspicious as to why Snoop and Dre won't bail out Suge after his bail was set at $10 million, when Suge was the one who bailed out Snoop in '93 for $1 million. Well, Tekashi 6ix9ine made a crazy claim back in 2021 on a podcast with academics that Snoop is allegedly writing letters to the judge to keep Suge in jail. 6ix9ine claims he obtained this information from Suge Knight's son.
You think Snoop Dogg is a rat?
What you mean by that?
Look at this camera. Cause Snoop Dogg got an order protection on Suge Knight. And Suge Knight calls my phone every other week.
What you mean he got an order protection?
He got an order protection on Suge Knight in the 90s. The whole West Coast know about it. They not letting Suge Knight out of jail because Snoop Dogg keep calling.
After this, nothing else was said, but Suge will continue talking about Snoop. Unfortunately, I don't see this beef ever being resolved fully. It's clear that these two still have an underlying dislike for one another.